Our presentation is on HUAC and McCarthyism, which
William G.
So we have a video here to show kind of like the threat of communism to the rest of the world in like throughout its time during the 20th century, and you really get to see why it was such a big threat for Western countries. So you can see how quickly it spread throughout the East. See China, Russia, much of Eastern Europe, Asia too.
Isn't that mad scary?
So it really makes you able to see why people were so afraid of communism and the threat it presented. So let's see here. So this is about the Second Red Scare, which took place after World War II. As you know, communism was a political ideology originally made by Karl Marx, and as we watched the video earlier, in 1917 the Soviet Union came to be. But in the U.S., people were very afraid of communism because they saw it as very un-American, and it was so different from what people were used to. And so, after the Second World War, the threat of communism was really big.
So, HUAC, House of Un-American Activities Committee, was one of the main institutions of anti-communism in the late 1940s and the early 1950s. And its purpose was to investigate allegations of communist influence and activity. And it mainly targeted the Hollywood industry because during the 30s, the Great Depression increased the appeal for leftist organizations for struggling actors. So the Hollywood Ton and Blacklist. So in October 1947, more than 40 individuals received subpoenas to appear before HUAC under suspicion of being connected to communism. And most people cooperated with investigators because they feared that their career was in jeopardy. But 10 screenwriters and directors challenged the legitimacy of the committee. They said that it was a violation of their rights, and they were cited for contempt of Congress, and they were all found guilty. After they were released, Hollywood blacklisted them, and later the blacklist grew larger as the HUAC investigations continued.
And if you're not sure what the blacklist is, it's where a group of Hollywood producers, they basically refuse to hire communists.
McCarthyism. So Senator Joseph McCarthy was a junior senator from Wisconsin with no national reputation before the 1950s. So during February 1950, Senator McCarthy made a speech, and he made a list that accused 81 individuals in the State Department of being connected to communism. And in June, he declared more than 150 communists were in Hollywood. And in the following years, he accused more and more Americans of being communists, and he gained more and more power. And hundreds of people lost their jobs because of the accusations that he made, and people were afraid to step up against him because he would just accuse them of being communists.
So many civil liberties were violated in HUAC and Senator McCarthy's actions. So the First Amendment was violated because people who had communist beliefs have the right to have that belief. It says so in the First Amendment that they have a right to free speech. So punishing people for that belief goes against the First Amendment. But people were charged for speaking out, such as the Hollywood Ten. They were thrown in jail for it, and for the Fifth Amendment was also violated because, like, the Hollywood Ten, what they did is, like, they didn't want to come before the committee to incriminate themselves, and they questioned its legitimacy, and they were thrown in prison for that. But they have a right, if they want to not testify if they think they could incriminate themselves. And also, the Sixth Amendment was violated because it says that people have a right to a fair and public trial, and as the Hollywood Ten, they received no trial. They were thrown in prison. So, and this is, like, unfair to them because, like, they never got to see if what they did is actually a crime. They were just put in prison for it. So, in this situation, the needs of society were prioritized much more over people's individual liberties, because a lot of people believed to protect America's national security that it was okay to neglect a lot of people's civil rights that they have, and this served the country's interest. People were thrown in jail for the common good of the nation. Many innocent people who weren't even communists. So, we believe that the government was not justified in their actions because their basic witch hunt against communism ruined so many innocent lives and really didn't do any good for the country. Of all the people that they arrested, very few of them are actually still suspected to be communists, and what outcome they actually had on the Cold War is not known because it can't be, it's very small. So a lot of people, so many people had their lives ruined for just being accused of being communists.
So Senator McCarthy and HUAC had a very negative impact on the citizens of the United States, and a lot of people lost their jobs, both from the Hollywood blacklist that Hollywood made and the accusations that Senator McCarthy made. The accusations ruined a lot of people's lives, and they were, like, without evidence, and many Americans feared of their careers being taken away. And it's maybe communism was a real threat to the U.S. because of, like, so many countries had communist governments, but I believe that it was not necessary to have a bunch of people's jobs taken away.
Thank you for watching.
Questions?
Was anyone famous on the blacklist?
Not anyone too famous that you'd recognize, because maybe if you lived back then, but not now. Nikki?
So I might have missed it, but who was, like, on the HUAC? Like, who was in that?
It's was a committee in the House of Representatives, so, like, it would be a group of congressmen.
Alright, gotcha.
That's where they changed the legitimacy.
Wasn't there something too with, like, a military commission or, like, army people were, like, something with military? They're the ones that were, like, knocking on doors and accusing people for McCarthy. Was that something you guys came across?
I didn't see anything about that, but it may be.
Was McCarthy just, like, accuse them? So did McCarthy just, like, accuse people, like...
Yeah, he originally he said there were 150 people, but then he cut his list down to 80 people. So, but, like, there was an investigation that was launched into it by another House committee, and they didn't find any evidence.
Where does he get his, like, accusations from? Like, how can...
We don't know. He just
have no-
suspected some people.
Yeah, and then he just detained them. That's why
It's like hearsay, but you guys saw the fear of the spread, right? So people saw that in real time, sort of like the spread throughout the world, and as the other group talked about, it's always been a thorn in the side of this country, like the threat of communism, right? And so if your name is associated with communism, then all of a sudden your livelihood is probably impacted significantly, because even if it's not true, you're still been, like, targeted your name's been smeared all across Hollywood, or your name's been smeared all across town, right? But there's another group of congressional members who are like, this guy's just like pointing fingers without any legitimate base, and they start to have that butting of heads too.
And like, it was really scary for Americans because when McCarthy made his speech about how many communists there were, it was like, wow, had communists infiltrated our government? Like, it was really scary to think that that could happen. So, Peter?
Was McCarthy re-elected?
Yeah, he was.
But was he like after like they figured out like what he was saying was like false? Like
I think the army like took him down. Like he was he
He
asked
got
for like
impeached?
preferential treatment or something, and then the army like just like destroyed his reputation.
Okay, thank you guys.